Hi, my name is Dr. Carmen Jones, and I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. And I wanted to share some information with you today. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about hormones and stress. This is a very common topic that's coming up quite a bit in my practice, and I think it's a very common concern for folks, for women and for men. And so I wanted to take a little bit and do sort of this as an educational video to explain the role of hormones and stress. We're going to define hormones here in a little bit. I am a visual person, so I like to give you guys a little bit of visual. So hopefully these slides are working for me. So like I said, my name is Dr. Carmen Jones. I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. And I wanted to start off by defining hormones. See what happens. So the hormones I'm going to talk to you today about are our thyroid, our adrenals, and our sex hormones, our estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So when we're talking about hormones, I think it's helpful to understand where they come from, what influences them, and how they affect us physically, even mentally and emotionally. All right. So we're going to start in the brain. So there's something that's called the HP axis, and you can kind of substitute. There's the HPT axis, HPA, HPG. The H stands for hypothalamus and the P stands for pituitary. Those are both in our brain and they're part of our endocrine system. The HPT axis sends signals to our thyroid that stimulates our body's ability to make our T4, our T3, our thyroid hormones. The HPA axis sends signals down to our adrenals on top that sit on top of our kidneys, and they support the production of our cortisol, our stress hormone. Is the big one the adrenals produce, but they do other hormones as well, like our aldosterone. And then our HPG axis, again, starts in the hypothalamus and the pituitary in our brain, and then sends signals to our gonads, our ovaries, and for men, testes, to support the production of our sex hormones, things like our estrogen, our progesterone, our testosterone. Okay, so knowing where all these hormones comes from, I think is very important in understanding the relationship that they have with one another. So how do we know our hormones are out of balance, right? Most of the time people notice things are out of balance when they experience symptoms. Okay, so those symptoms can be very broad when we're talking about hormones, but I want to share this with you because it'll show you kind of some of the commonalities. So things like weight gain or weight loss, right? Hot flashes, changes in our libido or our sex drive. For women, PMS or irregular periods, hair loss or hair thinning, right? Can be associated with hormone imbalances. Now, not just around our sex hormones, but even things like sleep disturbances, our insomnia, or trouble falling asleep, headaches, brain fog, depression, anxiety, changes in appetite, and even digestive issues can be a result of hormone imbalances. So usually when we think of hormone imbalances, especially in men and women, oftentimes people think of our sex hormones, our estrogen or our testosterone being out of balance. Sometimes even thyroid, like you can see some of these hair changes, weight gain, right? Skin changes. You can see that even in people think of thyroid hormone. Now, I want to introduce to you guys, if you don't already know, our cortisol hormone and how that can look as far as physical symptoms if our cortisol hormone is out of balance. Okay. Again, things like weight gain or difficulty losing weight. You can see hot flashes. Oftentimes I see this in folks, especially in women or in men, but in women who are premenopausal, maybe in their 20s and 30s, who are experiencing hot flashes. They're thinking, oh gosh, something's the matter with my hormones. You're probably on the right track, but don't forget to include assessing your cortisol levels. Again, men, we don't normally expect hot flashes in men, but oftentimes if our cortisol is out of balance, men can experience hot flashes as well. changes in our libido, again, changes in our thyroid function, irregular periods, irritability, a lot of tiredness and fatigue, a lot of lack of motivation to get things going, even cravings for food or digestion changes, blood sugar changes can be associated with our cortisol levels being out of balance, difficulty handling stress or anxiety. So I like to compare those two lists of symptoms because there's a lot of overlap, right? When we're thinking about low testosterone, low estrogen, or changes in our estrogen, or low thyroid. And so understanding that those symptoms can be part of a spectrum as far as how well our hormones are functioning. So historically, like I said, when we think of hormones, we think of it, we've been taught often that it's an estrogen problem, especially among women. If you experience a lot of PMS, we've been told that's too much estrogen and we've got to balance out that estrogen. Menopause, we've been taught that's too low estrogen, right? Our estrogen changes as we age. And so we have to support estrogen pathways. In men, things like andropause, right, or like low testosterone has historically been an estrogen problem, that men have had too much estrogen. Well, I like to share this graphic, you'll see sort of on the right-hand side, because estrogen is a big player in our hormones, but it's not the only player, right? You'll see in this graph, or in this picture, estrogen is the yellow, but progesterone is in the green. So now, though this particular graph doesn't show us the levels of testosterone and how that changes in women, but progesterone can be a big player that isn't often discussed. And understanding that relationship is important as well. So as a naturopathic physician, I always want to try to find the root cause, right, of hormone imbalances. And so understanding what hormones are in play and what are the biggest contributors to hormone imbalances. I talk a lot about diet, lifestyle, and nutrition because that's a big component as to whether our body has the nutrients it needs in order to produce our hormones in adequate amounts at appropriate times. Medical history is also important because there can be a familial component, genetics. Medical history can also include environmental exposure, environmental changes. Now, because a lot of these hormones are fat soluble, they are directly affected by our environmental toxin exposure. And so I go through that with folks, trying to identify if that could be playing into maybe why our bodies, if we're making plenty of hormones, are we metabolizing, or are we breaking down our hormones in adequate amounts at the appropriate time? That can be related to our toxic body burden. So discovering what your root cause is can be a little bit of an exploring process. Very rarely is it one thing, to be honest. It's usually a compilation of things. But when we start to dive in to try and identify what that root cause is to your hormone imbalance, we can begin to kind of allude to what it needs the priority, right? Where can we start to make the most changes, or I tell folks, the biggest bang for your buck? The top of the list is usually stress. So even though all these other components, our diet, our medical history, our genetics, our toxic body burden, are essential in understanding what are all the players that are contributing to our hormone imbalance, we can't overlook stress, okay? So I want to share with you the super easy hormone pathway of how our body makes some of our hormones. Now, this specifically highlights our stress hormone, our estrogen, our testosterone, or our progesterone. Like I said, this is a super easy pathway. It doesn't show any of the cofactor, any of the enzymes involved, but it's a nice outline to get you to understand the relationship. Okay, so what happens is our body takes cholesterol. It makes cholesterol. From cholesterol, it breaks that down into the beginning process of our hormones. Pregnenolone is sort of our first stop. From pregnenolone, it can go to DHEA or progesterone. You'll see from progesterone, we can go to androstenedione or to cortisol. So cortisol was our stress hormone. It can also go to aldosterone, which is also produced in our adrenals to help balance our electrolytes. From androstenedione, then we go to testosterone and then estrogen. Okay. If there is a dysfunction in this part of the pathway, then we can have an overflow of testosterone going to DHT or I don't remember what DHT stands for, but this is what we could call our androgens, right? And so this can be significant in our like PCOS. This can be significant in men as far as hair loss or hair changes. Androgens are important to see where we're at. Acne can also be a symptom of excess androgens. So understanding this relationship between how our body takes that progesterone, which is necessary for our regular cycles in men and in women, but how it allocates it towards if we have a higher demand for stress to produce cortisol, or if we have adequate amounts of cortisol to go to our sex hormones, our testosterone and estrogen. So I like to highlight this relationship because oftentimes in understanding how our stress levels or that demand for cortisol directly affects our sex hormones, I think is essential in finding our root cause and understanding where to target our hormones, balancing our hormones. Okay. So the other piece, so that's how cortisol affects our sex hormones. Well, how does it affect our thyroid, right? Thyroid changes is very significant in the US. Quite a bit of the population has thyroid changes. Thyroid medication is starting to creep up as far as prescriptions go, and there are several ones available for folks. But again, I'm always trying to figure out what the root cause is. If you have a low functioning thyroid or hypothyroid, that tells us a certain set of symptoms that I expect, that tells us there's a dysfunction in the thyroid, but it doesn't tell us why. Right? I'm always trying to find what's that why, what's that root cause of why your thyroid is not functioning appropriately. So we consider stress. I like this infographic because it shows the relationship. We introduced the HPA and the HPT axis a little bit earlier, the hypothalamus and the pituitary. The A is for adrenals. On this right side, the HPT, the hypothalamus and pituitary, and thyroid. Now, this is important to understand because you can see how our body translates stress through the hypothalamus and the pituitary. You create these hormones, these releasing hormones, CRH and ACTH. The more stress that we experience, the more hormones are produced. Well, you see these little dotted lines. The more these hormones are circulating in our bloodstream, they can actually inhibit our thyroid. So we call this a physiologic inhibition. So what that means is it slows down our thyroid hormone, our thyroid stimulating hormone. That's the signal that tells your thyroid to make thyroid hormone. And thyroid hormone is important for our metabolism. That's why we often associate it with weight, but also our brain health and our bone health. And so making sure that your thyroid is working correctly is very important as well. So when I say a physiological inhibition, that means that sometimes your thyroid hormone, your doctor may do thyroid labs and tell you, oh, your thyroid looks fine. That means that your labs are within normal range, but you could still be experiencing thyroid symptoms. Troubles with either gaining weight or difficulty losing weight, hair changes, dry skin, cold intolerance, swelling, edema, brain fog, right? Memory issues. Those types of symptoms can be associated with this. So understanding this relationship, I think, is very important because a lot of folks are more familiar with thyroid. So they may come to me and say, hey, I think I have a thyroid problem, or, but they haven't either had the testing or they've had the testing and it wasn't a full thyroid panel. And their doc told them, oh, we don't have to worry about thyroid. It's within normal limits. Your TSH is within normal limits. But my response to that is your thyroid optimal, right? If it's not quite optimal, we've got to figure out where that dysfunction is occurring. So understanding that relationship to how our body naturally will inhibit that. So why does it do that? Because when we have a higher demand for stress, whether that's emotional stress or physical stress, what happens is our body gets in that survival mode. It's in that fight or flight mode. And your body says, hey, I'm trying to survive, so I'm going to allocate all my resources to this, to handling this stress. So that means it puts your thyroid on the back burner. So then we have less thyroid hormone, right, available. So what can you do? There's a lot of areas that we can work on to support your hormone production, your balancing of hormones, and it really kind of depends on what your root cause is. But because nutrition and lifestyle and diet is one of my biggest therapies in my toolbox, knowing where you can support those pathways is very important. So we know that vitamin C and good B complex vitamin Bs, usually our B5, our B6, and even B2, are essential in order for this steroid pathway to continue and to continue in a smoothly, right? In a smooth pattern, if you will. So you can see that our body needs vitamin C just for the first step, just in order to take cholesterol to pregnenolone. If we're deficient in vitamin C, it's going to be much harder for that, just that start of this pathway to occur. As far as the B vitamins go, you can see that it acts on, here I highlighted 4 different reactions that B complex is essential in order for those to go forward. So I tell folks, when we're trying to determine, if there's deficiencies present, we've got to supply those things in order. If we can get your body in that healing and repairing state, we need to make sure that the ingredients, if you will, are available. So for example, if you were going to try to make a cake, right, and you didn't have flour, or you didn't have the main ingredient to put that cake together, your cake's not going to turn out very well. So it's the same thing. When we're trying to put your body in that healing and reparative state, we need to make sure that those ingredients are readily available, so that there aren't deficiencies present, so that we can, influence these pathways or these cascades so that your body can produce what we expect it to, right, in appropriate amounts. So as far as B vitamins, right, there are a lot of places you can get B vitamins. You can do supplementation and a good active B complex, but we can also get it in foods, things like whole grains, brewer's yeast, pollen, miso, liver, raw nuts and sprouts, and even rice bran syrup are very high in B vitamins. Nutritional yeast would be up here as well, next to this brewer's yeast. So including those in your diet on a regular basis can be very helpful in making sure that your steroid pathways aren't getting hung up because of vitamin deficiencies. Other things you can do as far as lifestyle, balancing out your blood pressure or blood sugar, maintaining adequate amounts of protein and fiber throughout the day. I didn't even talk about the influence of insulin that it has on this hormone production, but it's important to know that that is also a piece of how our body produces hormones. Let's see. Because I do a lot of nutrition counseling with folks, it's also important when I say an active B complex, it's important to know about therapeutic dosing and making sure that you're getting adequate amounts of B vitamins as well as active forms. So what I like to do with folks, so this is just a quick example of good quality B complex will have these ingredients listed as well as sort of the milligrams and the dosing. Okay, So I like to share this information with folks to give them a better idea as to what you can do, gives you a different perspective on hormones and how to balance them. If you would like more information, I'd be happy to help. Here's my contact information on your screen. Check out my website. You can book an appointment. You can give me a call, and we can get to your root cause of if you feel like you're experiencing a hormone imbalance and you just don't feel optimal or your self, if you don't quite feel 100%, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm hoping to add some more videos on this channel, talking more about specific components of the hormones. So please like and subscribe and follow me for more information in the future. Thank you.